What is going on YouTube? How are you? I am ImpendingDuff, otherwise known as Neil Duffy. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back, hopefully. It's been a while, I know that, and I decided to make my life a little bit easier and make a generic intro for this series. This is my quick tip series, which, if you're not new to the channel, you've seen a few of them so far, but I have over 100 of these that I've filmed over the last 5-6 years or so, and they released to my Patreon, so I like to slowly trickle them out. And it's funny because most of these videos are about 5 years, 4 years, 3 years old, whatever. They're older. That's the point of this. This video and any other video from here on forward until close to 100, you'll probably notice that the set is completely different. My studio is completely different. That's because I used to live in the great area of Detroit, Michigan, and now I live in rural Gulf Coast, Florida. So even my studio is different, obviously. But I wanted to touch base with y'all and say thank you for watching the channel. If you enjoy this, please do me a favor and subscribe. Leave a comment down below, your thoughts, even your version. What I teach is my version, right? It's what works for me. I encourage you to go out and learn these techniques that I'm teaching from other people. You know, throw that in your own mind's blender, churn it up, and spit out your product. What I'm teaching you, what I'm showing you in these quick tips is not the Bible, right? So I really appreciate you coming by the studio and checking out the video. Please, again, remember these are somewhat old, years old, in fact. And if you would like to see some current content, you can check out my Patreon. The link's down below. I do this as a full-time income, teaching and painting. So if you want to see some live action, come to Twitch right now, fall of 2025. My schedule is Tuesdays and Thursdays at night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard, until about midnight. At any rate, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the quick tip. All right, gang. Welcome to quick tip number 23, the last for 2020, but certainly not the last ever. This one comes in from another Patreon request, this one via the Discord. Forgive me, I forget who it was. Let me look real quick. That would be Bino Al. My dude Al is says, maybe this would be way too specific or rare, but I'm doing an icon on a military walker model that I want to look like it was sloppily added with spray paint. But I'm not quite sure how to properly make the stencil for the miniatures in a case like that. So, Al and everyone out there, essentially what we're looking for is, like, take for instance a Gene Stealer Cults type model, where that Gene Stealer kind of half Ouroboros twisting Tyranid icon that they use is haphazardly sprayed across a vehicle they've taken over or a building or whatever. It's very common in the lore for Gene Stealer cults to have spray painted iconography to let other cultists know that, you know, this is a place, you know, whatever. But the point being is we're trying to create that sprayed on look, and naturally we're going to be using an airbrush for this. There isn't really a great way to do this with a hand brush, but I will show you a brief demonstration on how I would do it with the brush if I have time. So essentially what I did is I traced out a Alpha Legion's dragon here with my X-Acto knife, and I'm going to flip it around. I'm not going to say that this is the preferred method. I'm just doing this for a matter of quickness. What I recommend you use is something that is rigid, something that has a little bit of backbone to it. This is just regular printer paper. It can work, but as you can see, it needs a little blue pill maybe. Another good thing to use would be like frisket, plastic frisket, or even for those of you who might have a teacher in your life, transparencies, the overhead projectors. I don't know if they use those anymore. Even if you're in a pinch, you know, this bottle is a bad example because there's a lot of texture on it, but
clear plastic, frisket plastic, blister plastic. You know, maybe you get an Easter bunny and, you know, the little plastic window that they have on that. You can use that. Blister plastic. Anything with a little bit of backbone. And the reason I say clear plastic is cool is because you can see where you're lining it up, right? With this, I'm not necessarily as pinpoint because I can't see what's surrounding it. So you can go that route, or there are companies like Death Ray Designs, shameless plug for one of my sponsors, who has really nice stencils. They're flimsy, but you can put them on the frisket and kind of trace them out, if you will, or even cut just a circle out and then frame that decal or that stencil around it so that it's still got the backbone, but the decal is floating. So what I'm talking about is they have these, they're like clear blue stencils, right? I love them for airbrushing just in general, but they have a whole line of these different iconographies for chapters, etc. It's not just limited to these chevrons, if you will, but you can see the plastic that they make them out of is translucent, so you can actually see through them. See that? And I like that a lot. You can use that to your advantage for so many different things. Eventually I'm going to do some kind of stenciling video on YouTube. I think stencils are severely underutilized. But essentially what I would do is cut myself a circle. Like let's say I want to use this Alpha Legion dragon, right? But it's on a flimsy piece of paper. I've cut out a flimsy piece of paper. What I'll do is I'll just cut out like a small little halo to float it over, right? And then I'll take that Death Ray Designs kind of decal and I'll just float it over the top of it, stick it to that, right? So it's kind of like, here's the circle, and now I've got a nice, basically rigid backing, pretending this is actually like cardstock or something along the lines that has a little backbone. By sticking that tape kind of consistency material, you now have something with a little more backbone. And the reason I say you need a little bit more backbone will make sense in just a second here. So, just plain white paper for demonstration reasons. Let's say I just want to spray this. Now, again, I don't recommend using decal paper because as soon as I moisten this with paint, I'm technically activating all of these decals. I frankly don't need these decal sheets. I have plenty of them, so I'm not super worried about it. But the point is it has a backbone to it. So the idea is that your airbrush naturally sprays kind of a dusty appearing look, right? And I'm about 6 inches away from the paper right now. Now if I get close to it, you see that dot gets much more concise, more controlled, more tight, right? Same thing with this decal. If you think of it as like almost an aperture, if you will, I'm going to keep the same distance, right? And I'm going to spray quick little boom. It's a nice, crisp, clear dragon, right? Well, now, look at this. See, I've got this kind of like shadowing going on. This is another kind of aspect we can do to this. But let's just lift this up by, I don't know, that much. Not much. You know, maybe 1/8 of an inch off the paper. And now let's see what happens. See the difference there? By lifting that stencil by just 1/8 of an inch off that paper, it's got this sprayed on look to it, which is really neat. It almost looks like it's been kind of just haphazardly thrown on there. And that's the other thing. This rigid paper, if you can see, there are different variations. If I hold it where like I've kind of compressed it between my 2 fingers and my thumb for a bend, and I hold it there, I've got kind of a variation in and of itself, right? So now you see, I'll get it a little bit closer. Now you can see I've got a little bit more of a fuzzy edge towards the front of the dragon, but the back of the dragon is really precise, right? So the whole idea is like the guy's running up to a tank and he's like, this is ours, and he's kind of got it off cocked a little bit, right? So you'll get that kind of powdery feel towards this edge, where this edge is nice and flush to the vehicle, so it's gonna come out cleaner, right? The other thing is, again, utilizing this, if you're, think of this as a scale model, this isn't necessarily this big, but you put it up against something and you get that overspray, right? So this might be nice and clean, but now you've got that overspray kind of showing that, hey, I've come up and I just quickly spray painted it onto something. So those are your ways to kind of spray them on. Now, if I were to do this with a paintbrush, it's going to be quite tricky, but what I would want to do is, if I can grab one, grab a dry brush, something similar to the eye makeup brush. Those of you in the Loot Crate got a couple of these a few months back. But essentially, what I'm going to do here is pick up some paint. I'm going to remove a little bit, not a ton. You know, I've still got paint on there, right? And then essentially what you'll do is get it as flat as you can and just kind of stipple it on. And that's the best way I could recommend doing this without an airbrush. Now, look at that and tell me that's any different from the four that I sprayed on there. This is the one I just dry brushed right here by stippling. There is literally next to no resemblance of which one is which. So don't be afraid if you don't have an airbrush. You can totally do this with a dry brush. Just kind of stipple it on and poof, you got another one, right? So we can do a bunch of these. Stipple it on. Now, unfortunately, there's not really going to be a great way to kind of feather it out as if you were holding the stencil far away. But if you stipple it, poof, you have a hard time telling me which one's sprayed on versus which one's stippled on. So there are two methods. You don't have to have a airbrush for this. The other thing that I wanted to kind of talk about is making sure that you're using colors that will work appropriately with whatever you're spraying them on. If I come over and I spray this on, if I were to spray dark gray on top of this kind of medium gray matte, that just wouldn't contrast right, and you wouldn't see that finite speckling. That finite speckling is going to sell that kind of effect, if you will. So the other thing, talking about imagery, you don't necessarily want to pick anything with floating islands in it, like this Chaos Star, this little central eye, this oval here. That's an island. If I were to cut out just the gold spaces, this would be an island. That'd be a really difficult stencil to make, right? Because then you'd have to place that island and deal with that. So my first kind of tip on making the stencils themselves is skip anything with an island. These Ouroboroses have islands in them. The other thing is anything that's super sharp detail, such as this Ouroboros having all these tight little flames in there, that's going to be rough. That's going to be difficult to work with. Anything with undulations, like these flames, are going to be really difficult. Anything with the radius to the lines is going to be much more difficult to cut with your hobby knife. If you happen to own or know someone who owns a Cricut cutter or even a vinyl plotter, then you're in luck. You can use those to cut out stencils to your heart's content. It depends on what size they can cut, what what micron they can cut to. It all really depends on the machine, and they can get pretty expensive depending on who you go to, or I'm sorry, which style you have. Cricut machines can be a little difficult. Sometimes when they cut, they don't connect the whole image. Like if they come along and they're cutting, let's say they're cutting the letter C, right? And the blade goes around and it's doing its thing, and it comes around and it's cutting. This is how the cutter stops, right? It stops just like that. So you see there's like this little gap between the two lines there. If my camera focuses, there we go. Right here, there's that little gap. See that gap? So all you'll have to do is just come in with your knife and cut that gap out, and you'll have a nice clean seat. But I know the Cricut cutters and vinyl plotters and such, those are not necessarily at your full not exposure, full I don't know, why am I flustering? You know what I mean. They're not at your full use. I don't know. I always lose my brain when I do these things. But anyway, I hope that helps you guys out, Al. I hope that helps you with your model. And if you guys have any questions, as always, leave them in the Discord or leave them right here on Patreon.
I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for 2020. It was probably one of the most difficult years in my life. Without you guys, who knows where I'd be right now. So both mentally, financially, professionally, all of that. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Have a great 2021. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.